Video games can give you crazy amounts of choice, and sometimes they make it really hard on you. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 10 of the most difficult decisions in video games, Part 2. Now before we get going, basically we want to say consider this list a sequel to the 10 hardest video game choices that made us sweat video, which came out a while ago. It covers a similar topic, so we're going to avoid repeating ourselves. I'll give off a quick list of what's in that video, so if you're interested in watching that one, it's also good. Of course we enjoyed making it, and we hope that you enjoyed it. The Life is Strange ending choice, saving Kaiden or Ashley in Mass Effect, killing or sparing the little sisters in Bioshock, the ending of Far Cry 3, the ending of Spec Ops The Line, the ending of Fable, whether or not you kill an ally to keep up cover in Black Ops 2, Witcher 3's baby in the oven choice, GTA 5's Death Wish ending, and The Walking Dead's final choice. So, without any further ado, starting off at number 10 is Wolfenstein: The New Order's branching timeline. The New Order is a game that's kind of unique. It's not really a choice game. You're not making moral decisions in it, but the story starts with one huge choice that affects the outcome of not just this game, but the sequel as well. It happens at the end of the first mission, Death's Head's compound. You, along with your allies, manage to break into this lab, but you're ambushed and captured by the mad scientist super soldiers. That's when he gives you a sadistic choice. Either he kills Fergus or Wyatt. You don't get a third option or any way out. One of these guys has to die. At this point in the story, you barely know who these guys are, but just the fact that this freak makes you choose who dies makes you not want the decision. Like, nobody wants to make that decision, you know? Depending on who lives, though, the character becomes one of your major allies for the rest of the story. They don't just play a small role either, they're important characters, so that choice is actually a lot more important than it seems. It even affects what kind of things you can do in the game, like if you can hotwire electronics or pick locks on doors. And it's hardly the only sadistic choice decision out there, but it's one of the most memorable.
In your opinion, which one of these two varieties would best support my research?
And number 9 is Saints Row the Third, the ending choice. Now, the third entry in the Saints Row series likes to hit you with choices from time to time, but they're usually pretty inconsequential until you hit the penultimate mission, three-way. The whole thing starts with a three-way battle between the Saints, Stag Soldiers, and the Luchadors gang. Mid-mission, you find out two things. First, the leader of the Luchadors, Killbane, is fleeing the city, and that one of the leaders of Stag has kidnapped some of your people and the mayor, who is, by the way, Burt Reynolds, and tied them up on the big statue at Magarak Island, and they're planning on blowing it up. So you can't do both things at once, so you have to choose. Do you save Shondi and stop the explosion, or go after Killbane and get your revenge? For most players, saving Shondi is the obvious heroic choice, but what makes this decision difficult is how it affects your ending. So these two endings based on this choice are wildly different. If you go after Killbane, the more evil option, you take on Stag in their flying helicarrier, and it's an appropriately over-the-top mission, and one of the most entertaining in the game in terms of pure spectacle at the very least. If you save Shondi, the good option, you get the significantly goofier final mission, Gangstas in Space, which puts you on the set of the titular film. The whole thing is a joke. It's almost like the game's making fun of you for taking the nice option.
But I found something. Damn it. 9.
Cut!
And depending on who you are, it's a tough choice already, but add in the really different final missions, and you have a legitimately tough choice here. And number 8 is Pokemon, picking your starter, going in a totally different direction. Not all decisions in games have to be intense moral dilemmas. Sometimes a decision comes along that's very tough, but for entirely different reasons. Like picking a class in an RPG or deciding what abilities to unlock. Depending on the game, these kinds of decisions might be just as difficult as deciding who lives and who dies, sometimes even tougher. Maybe the ultimate expression of these kinds of choices can be found in the Pokemon series, where you gotta make one of the most difficult decisions decisions in gaming at the start in picking a starter, the Pokemon you start with. Depending on what generation you're playing and who you are, this can feel like a no-brainer. One Pokemon's clearly better than the rest, so it's a simple choice, but it's also usually a very personal decision. It depends on what Pokemon you think looks cool, what kind of elements you're interested in building first, etc. For me, the toughest decision was always between Charmander, Bulbasaur, and Squirtle. They're all good in their own right, but they also all have their downsides. I always remember wanting to go with Charmander, but then having to remind myself that he's basically useless against both Brock and Misty. So I had to decide if I really wanted to grind out a second Pokemon or just pick one of the other starters, both of which are much better at the first two gym trainers. Most of the time, all that really matters is if you think they look cool, but when you do have to deal with gameplay consequences like that with Charmander and Red and Blue, it makes a tough choice even harder. Moving on to number 7, Black Ops Cold War's Lying or Telling the Truth. Kind of a spiritual sequel to Black Ops 2, Cold War is another Call of Duty game that gives the player some choices that are not easy to make. There's not as many overall, but at least with this choice, it completely changes not just the ending, but the entire finale. In the penultimate mission, you're given a choice: either tell Adler the truth about where Perseus, the Soviet bad guy, is heading, or lie and lead your team to the wrong location. Seems like an obvious choice. You want to make the good guy choice, right? Good, at very least from the standpoint the game is giving you. But the devil's in the details on this one, and those details make this whole thing way more nebulous. For one thing, the supposed good guys who are asking you for your help are also responsible for brainwashing you and basically erasing your old personality. You used to be an agent for Perseus that Adler used experimental CIA drugs on, which turns you into Bell, and you have a pretty good reason not really to want to help this guy. Perseus isn't a great guy. I mean, he wants to basically nuke all of Europe, but the United States put all those nukes there in the first place. Blowing everything up is tough to justify for sure, but it's not as if your side has no hand in it. It's a very complex set of circumstances. So the choice basically boils down to if you want to help Adler, who's been screwing with your brain the entire game, or not. Depending on what you choose, the final mission is wildly different. You tell the truth, you play through a pretty short mission where you attack Perseus' secret base and stop the broadcast. If you lie, you kill all your squad mates in a pretty wild final mission, which is intense to say the least. And then you have a final battle with Adler, which, yeah. And then you get to press the nuke button.
Так точно.
I think you deserve this moment, comrade.
Так точно, товарищ командир.
It's totally ridiculous, but it actually kind of feels more like the intended ending than the quote-unquote good one, even though the consequences are pretty dire. It's one of those choices where you're really kind of picking between the more boring and the more interesting option rather than the moral and the immoral one. And number 6 is Detroit Become Human, the pacifism versus violence with Markus. Even though it can be pretty blunt and heavy-handed, the consensus on Detroit Become Human is it's probably Quantic Dream's most consistently good game. There's a lot of choices to make, and a lot of them actually matter, but probably the biggest of all of them is whether you choose pacifism or violence while playing as Markus. For most of the story, you're kind of allowed to just waffle between peaceful protest and violent revolt. But at the Freedom March, you're forced to make a final choice whether the robot resistance is going to be non-violent or not. And this is one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of choices. During the march, when the police block your way, you either stand your ground, which causes the police to fire into the crowd unprovoked, attack, which of course causes the police to fire anyway, or run away, which makes you look like a chump. Your choice here basically determines what the rest of the game looks like, and it's a major turning point in the story that has huge ramifications for every single character that you play as.
I repeat, this is an illegal gathering. If you do not disperse immediately, we will shoot.
At number 5 is Fallout New Vegas' Vault 34. Here's a game that loves its complex moral questions, and almost nothing seems to come easy in Fallout New Vegas. When it comes to decisions, there's dozens to pick through, but probably the most memorable to me is Vault 34. The story starts out pretty basic. There's an NCR sharecropper that needs your help. Their crops are dying, and so they want you to investigate the water supply for contamination. That eventually brings you to Vault 34, which is this hellish place filled filled with ghouls and heavy pockets of radiation. When you get to the reactor room, that's when you've got a decision to make. There are vault dwellers still alive behind a flooded section of the vault, and the only way to rescue them is to reroute control of the computer system to them. Now, if you want to help the sharecroppers, you have to disable the reactor, which will trap those vault dwellers forever. So you're forced to choose to either save lives of a small group of people or save the livelihoods of a larger settlement of people. Either way, one group suffers, and you have to make a decision since you're there and involved and putting stuff in motion. It's a cruel choice with no easy answers, and that's kind of how the game is. And number 4 in Witcher 3, Killing the Tree Spirit. Another game with a lot of tough choices without a lot of easy answers. Probably one of the toughest occurs in the quest to the Whispering Hillcock. There's a lot of stuff leading up to this, but to make a long story short, your decision here has a ton of consequences and can easily have some pretty serious ramifications for the villagers of Downwarren, also the orphans trapped in Crookback Bog, and the Bloody Baron and his family. There's a lot of factors to consider. If you kill the spirit, the villagers are safe, but the orphans disappear. They're most likely eaten, and Anna, the Bloody Baron's wife, goes mad because of it. Freeing the spirit, on the other hand, makes it so you can save the orphans, but the villagers are punished and many are killed. Anna's fate is actually worse. She's turned into a water hag. Even if you don't know the outcome ahead of time, it's just a tough choice in general. Do you kill an evil spirit that's tormenting people, or do you let it live so you can find more about Ciri? A lot of factors. Not a lot of good outcomes, though, which makes it a pretty difficult decision. And number 3 in Infamous 2, making everyone conduits or killing all the conduits. Most of the time, the decisions in the Infamous games are obvious. If you want the evil powers, you choose the red option. If you want the good powers, you choose the blue. It doesn't really matter all that much otherwise, but the ending to Infamous 2 is of course different. It's actually kind of a legitimately difficult decision that has a big effect on the final mission. Basically, you're given 2 options: side with the beast, spread the conduit powers all over the world, or kill basically everyone in New Marius, including your new best friend, or sacrifice yourself and kill all the conduits. No matter what you do, someone who doesn't deserve it is going to die. They even subvert your expectations, because if you choose the less evil self-sacrifice option, the evil character, Nyx, is actually the one to side with you, while the good character, Kuo, tries to stop you. It just goes to show the final decision in Infamous 2 goes beyond the usual good and evil binary choices that happen the rest of the game. It's actually a really tough choice. And number 2 in Dragon Age Origins, going with Morrigan's plan or sacrificing yourself. At the end of Origins, they drop the bombshell that the Archdemon, the thing you've been trying to kill the entire game, can't actually be destroyed by, like, stabbing it. You gotta sacrifice something. There's a few options to pick from. Either sacrifice yourself, one of your Grey Warden allies, or take the third option, which, depending on who you ask, is either the obvious correct one or a very bad idea. I am, of course, talking about Morrigan's ritual. Instead of the Archdemon possessing the nearest Darkspawn and coming back to life, the ritual will make it so it possesses an unborn child, Morrigan's child. And yes, to do this you have to get it on with Morrigan, and the eventual result is that you created this game's version of the Antichrist. It's a bizarre choice, to say the least, but you're choosing whether you or one of your allies dies or nobody dies. If you're playing a female character or someone with a different love interest, it makes the choice especially awkward. If you're into Morrigan, it's probably a no-brainer. And as of this video, the actual consequences of this choice have yet to be felt with the Dragon Age universe, but it's one of the more stranger, complicated choices you can make in gaming. And finally, at number 1 is in Nier, saving Kain-aye or not. Here's a choice that is unique because it's one of the most agonizing for the character as it is for the player. If you know anything about this game, you probably heard about this, but after playing through the game 3 times, you're given another new ending, but this time you have a choice. This time around, your ally Kain-aye has lost control of the shade within her, so she attacks you. After fighting her off, you're given a simple choice: either sacrifice yourself to restore Kain-aye back to normal, or kill her and end her suffering. That first option seems like the obvious one, but there's a huge hang-up. It's not just the character of Nier who has to sacrifice themselves to save Kain-aye. You, the player, have to sacrifice too by deleting all your save files, permanently. That's dozens of hours of gameplay just down the drain. Brutal back in the 360 days when backing up your saves wasn't quite as easy as it is now. But if you get blindsided by this choice in the moment, it's a hell of a thing to have to decide without taking some time to think about first. Thing is, game is over. You don't really need a save anymore, but it also feels really wrong to delete everything like that. All that progress just gone. Hell, if you got a secondary save, that gets deleted too. So if you started a new game, then in between, sorry, you're just gonna have to start over from scratch. Most of the time, you're not really losing anything when you make a choice in a game, but here you're forced to delete one of the most precious things that a gamer can possibly have, a completed save file.
It's like I just found something special.
And that's all for today. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications. And as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter @FalconTheHero, and we'll see you next time right here on gameranx.